both hoop.
Okay.
Okay. Are we live now?
I think so.
Yeah, I think we're live. Let's go for it.
Respected elders, dear teachers, my brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
They want you to wait, Ishar.
Inshallah, inshallah. Respected elders, respected teachers, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. On behalf of the Sacred Text team, I hope that each and every one of you are well, are keeping safe, inshallah, and are looking forward to welcome the blessed month of Ramadan, inshallah, in the next few days, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair for joining us on your weekend. Inshallah, today we have with us our beloved teachers, Maulana Sajjad with us, Maulana Shams with us, and Ustada Anika with us. Assalamu alaikum to you all.
Salam.
Excellent. And we are here for the next hour 15 minutes, simply to answer your questions. Alhamdulillah, we've had a lot of questions come in via our social media platforms, via email, and I know there's a live chat going on. So please, we have a wonderful opportunity before Ramadan to ask whatever questions that we have to our panel of teachers. So inshallah, let's try and make the most of this time. Whatever question you have, we will try and answer them to the best of our ability, inshallah ta'ala. So without further ado, let's begin. We've had a lot of questions already in, so we will start with those questions. And we also have, before we begin, we also have teachers in the group chat as well on YouTube. So if you have any questions, we will have students and teachers within the live chat answering as well. So let's try and make the most of we can for the next hour 15 minutes. So without further ado, I will ask my first question, and I will start this with Maulana Sajjad. What is the meaning of Ramadan?
Meaning in terms of what it means to us, or what it means?
So a questioner has said that there is perhaps a difference of opinion, and they would want to know what the meaning of Ramadan is.
Are you talking about linguistically?
I guess if you could maybe elaborate on a few different, maybe the literal meaning and the spiritual meaning. And
well, generally speaking, remember Ramadan is just the name of the month, but what's more kind of important probably is the word related to fast itself. Remember, because months have their names, and most of their names are rooted in some type of general meaning. Whatever month it is, if it's Ramadan or if it's Rajab, or But most of the meanings are not always, they're not connected to the actions themselves, because bear in mind that a lot of these months were already called what they were before certain obligatory acts were ascribed to them. For instance, the fast of Ashura. The Muharram is not named after that or anything to do with that. So what's probably more pertinent is the idea of the fast itself, which is called Sawm in Arabic. And the word Sawm is generally in reference to kind of restraining oneself, al-imsak. So the word Sawm is always in reference, when we use it in terms of fast, to restrain oneself from the following things, food, water, and marital relations. These are the three underlining things. And examples that the scholars generally give is when the idea of pulling a horse back when it's bolting. So so that's a general meaning. It's the idea that what Allah's made, what's wajib upon you, meaning it's wajib on everybody, generally speaking, necessary that they eat food, otherwise you'll die. So what Ramadan does, it makes you give up wajibat. That's something different about the fast. It's different. The difference between a normal obligatory act like prayer and fasting is that very thing, the idea that you're giving up something necessary. Whereas with prayer, you don't give anything up really. You're just praying. It's just an action that you add. And that's why the famous hadith, Asamu li wa ana ajzi bih, that the fast is for me, God says, and I reward accordingly, is that the idea is that the reward for fasting is secret. It's a secret between the abd and his Lord. Number two, fasting in that sense is important because it has, you can't show off in terms of fasting in Ramadan. That's an important feature of Ramadan because everybody's fasting. It's not exclusive to you. And that's why God rewards accordingly, because everybody's fasting, then only God knows truly how sincere people were, how well they control themselves in terms of their speaking, etc. So that's what I kind of would say about it.
Jazakumullah khair. Ustada Anika, I have a question for you. If someone regularly prays their sunnah, their fard, and all of the nafil prayers and the witr for Isha, for example, and this is their normal habit, their normal practice, would it be wrong to leave this, shorten the Isha prayer to just the bare minimum, and then pray the 8 rakat tarawih?
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum. I hope everyone watching is well and really eager to start Ramadan. I would just like to add before I answer Sidi Izhar's question, is I would to add to what Maulana so eloquently explained. Lexically, Ramadan is from the word Ramada as well. This is before Islam as well. Ramada means to scorch and to burn. And what that really means is that this month, when Islam came and the month of fasting was made obligatory, it scorches and burns all kinds of spiritual and physical impurities out of you. It tests you. Now, this month is sent to test us, to reinforce us in every possible way. So now coming to your question, Izhar, if somebody is as pious as that masha'Allah, subhanallah, they read the 17 rakahs for their Isha, even in the long nights and the late Isha that happens in these Western countries, then I would say that Tarawih is extra. Tarawih is not instead. Tarawih is extra. Tarawih is it is a sunnah, yes, but the aim is to spend the night in worship. The aim is to spend the night connecting spiritually with more khushu to Allah Azza wa Jal. I would maybe look, there is 20 Tarawih is but you can read 8, 12 or 20. According to most schools, you can read 8, 12 or 20. So read your Isha as you did, and then add 8 to them to start off with, and then slowly increase it to 12. And then if you have that will that you can read 17 and more, then read the 20, inshallah. That's what I would advise, but I am sure if one of my esteemed teachers, Ustaz Shams or Maulana Sajjad, need to add to that for ease for people, then they can do so.
Jazakumullah khair.
Yeah, can I just jump in just one point that I want to mention? So I remember meeting this guy after Tarawih, and he asked me a question. He said, can I pray 16 rak'ah? It's a weird number as well. And I said, yeah, if you want. He said, can I pray 10? I think he was trying to like catch me out. I said, yeah, you can pray 10. He said, can I pray 8? I said, yeah, you can pray 8. He said, can I pray 2? I said, well, if you want, pray 2. Like, I'm not stopping you. He said, can I leave the Tarawih altogether? I said, look, it's not my business what you pray. It's up to you what you want to pray. Like, Tarawih isn't obligatory. I mean, some of the ulama consider it sunnah mu'akkada. Others do not consider it sunnah mu'akkada. So there's khilaf on it's grading, but bear something in mind that if do something that you can sustain, you know, there's no point going to the masjid and praying 20 for 2 days and then leaving the jama'ah. The most important action is the Isha prayer. Remember that, which is the fard. And then after that, what you can add and you can sustain, do that, especially if there's 20 rak'ah and it's full Quran and people can't listen to it. It's going to be difficult then. So, yeah.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for the input for that question. Hopefully it's been answered satisfactorily. Maulana Shamus, for someone who has just entered Islam, it's their first Ramadan, what are some of the basic things that this person can do to fulfill the commands that Ramadan has for them, especially someone who's new to Islam? It'll be difficult for them. It's completely new and it's difficult as well. With all those things in mind, what are the basics that someone can do?
Yeah, okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to everyone who's listening. So that's quite a broad question, but I imagine the person who asked the question had something specific in mind. So maybe that they know someone who's recently entered Islam. So it may be that the way I answer this question is too broad, and therefore, if they want to be more specific, inshallah, if the person's listening, they can just type it into YouTube or contact us, inshallah, and we'll try and answer it more specifically. The way I would approach that, I suppose, is the advice I'd give is the advice I'd give to anyone, which is the purpose of Ramadan isn't to make life difficult for us. Yes, we don't, we restrict our diet and there's an expectation that we increase our ibadah, but ultimately the objective is to gain closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No act of ibadah is there with its objective is never to cause hardship. In fact, the Quran tells us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. So Allah says about, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى إلى آخر الآية. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us explicitly that the objective is not to make life hard for us, but rather so it's not even, so that's clearly not the objective. But also it's not that it should be a byproduct of what we're doing. That actually is the opposite. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants ease for us. So there's a deep-rooted belief that we have that by fasting and going through some of these outward difficulties, that actually it will give us an internal spiritual benefit and an ease that comes with it. And I think anyone who has, if we all kind of recall back to the first time you completed Ramadan and fasted every single day, and that feeling of completion and living beyond your own, completing something beyond your own expectations, that elation that you feel is something that's unparalleled and it stays with you. I remember the first Ramadan I completed all 30 fasts. And when Ramadan finishes, you feel so much more in control of your body. And I don't know if this is just me and I'm a glutton, but I'd hope I'm not the only one, that as soon as Ramadan finishes, you suddenly feel like I've got complete control. I can now choose to continue in this way. I'm not a slave to food. I don't have to, my social interactions are not always governed by where we go to eat and where we go to drink. You're not always waiting for something, waiting for the waiter to come along and give you a menu and so on and so forth. Your discussion is solely that complete focus you have when you're talking to somebody, because you're not talking, the food isn't there. And also when you get through that, those first few days where suddenly the hunger pangs start to die down and all of a sudden you no longer want breakfast, you don't want to, when someone's eating, you don't desire to eat that food. you can stay completely 100% committed and focused to whatever it is that you want to do that day. That's a really empowering feeling. And when you experience that, you realize that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yuridullahu bikumul yusr, that's a very, very powerful statement, and it's addressed directly to our souls. The advice I'd give to somebody who is new to Islam is the same advice I'd give to anybody, is do what's within your capability. You know, always aspire, so aim high, but be realistic as to what you can achieve. So during Ramadan, see it as there is a hikmah behind Ramadan being for 29 or 30 days. There is and we know this now, we know whenever you give yourself a goal, you're far more likely to achieve that goal. And in fact, you could say, if you don't have a goal, you'll never reach a goal, right? You can never attain something that you've never aimed for. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifies it, the Prophet specifies these 29 or 30 days because it means, yes, we're going to challenge ourselves, but we know that there's a light at the end of that tunnel. And actually, not only is there a light at the end of that tunnel, but some way through that journey, you'll feel much more empowered and feel better about yourself. So somebody who's new to Islam, there's no monolithic, just because you're a new Muslim, somehow you're all treated the same. Actually, I believe, we're all individuals and everyone's at a different stage in their journey. Whether you're a new Muslim, you might feel much more inspired to really give it your all in Ramadan. And somebody else who's in a similar position to you actually feels daunted by Ramadan. So it could be and someone down the road who's been a Muslim all their life might feel more daunted about Ramadan coming than someone who's a new Muslim. You see, so we are all different. So I would say, do what's within your capability. Don't try and overdo it. Minimally try and to abstain from eating and drinking. Try and pray. At least take it as a chance to learn the prayer. If you can't do it in Arabic, learn to do it in English. If you can't, if you haven't memorized how to read the prayer, hold the Quran. Take a translation if you need to. Stand up and pray, because this is your connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You've entered this religion and your sense of connection to God is far more powerful than many Muslims out there that have lived their whole life as Muslims. So really take that opportunity to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and constantly ask God to make things easy for you. This is completely within the gift in the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he can make this Ramadan the most powerful, most spiritually enlightening Ramadan for you. If such a person who's just recently entered Islam finds fasting really difficult, if fasting is really, then I would say again, if you're very new to Islam, just do what you can. If there are days that you haven't fasted, then it doesn't mean that somehow you're a bad Muslim. The Prophet, that we've got precedent in hadith about encouraging people who are new to Islam and piecemeal inviting them to become regular in their prayer and become regular in their fasting. So I would say you don't beat yourself up about it. There are many Muslims out there that have been, again, they're Muslims their whole life and miss many fasts and many Ramadans and don't feel that sense of guilt. So the fact that there's guilt there is itself a very powerful catalyst to always do better. So aspire to do the best that you can. Try and connect to the Quran. Take it as a time-limited goal of 29 to 30 days to really connect to this religion, to the beauty of our religion. Connect to find a friend or a Muslim that you can really learn from, and they don't have to be a scholar. They could just be someone who you look up to, and spend time with them if you can. We're now getting over COVID, so it's possible to have that, the kind of build those personal relationships again. Go to the masjid where it's safe to do so. Go to the masjid and spend time there. I'm sure the panelists have probably want to comment on that, but they're just some of the bits of advice that I would give.
Jazakumullah khair. I think that's a wonderful message of keeping motivated and taking each day as it comes to try and do better and better yourself as each day goes on. Jazakumullah khair. Moving on, Ustada Anika, for our sisters out there who may be pregnant or going through Ramadan through pregnancy, how should you approach Ramadan?
Bismillah again. Pregnancy is very relative, Sidi Ithar, and all my sisters out there. they know this. For those who it is their first pregnancy, it is a little bit daunting. For those who it is their second or their third pregnancy, some of them can manage fasting and being pregnant, and it doesn't make them feel very unwell. So it is very, very individual. I would say exactly what Ustaz Shams has said, and I would just repeat exactly the same message. Whether you are pregnant or breastfeeding, fasting is not designed to make your life difficult. If you think you can manage it, then manage it. Keep a fast. If it does not make you feel very ill and uncomfortable, then keep another one. However, if you feel that you are going to become ill because of fasting, or there is a medical reason that you're suffering from some kind of pregnancy-related medical condition, and your GP has told you not to fast, then please don't, because you are given the leeway in our religion, subhanallah. The ease is there. You can always make up for it later. You can always make up for it when it is easy for you to do so. So yeah, rather than going into too much detail, the answer is exactly similar to what Ustaz Shams has said. See how you are and do it. I have often advised women to keep a few fasts, leave a few, keep a few fasts, leave a few. And most of the ladies that I have advised have managed to do so. Some cannot just keep it, specifically those in the first few months of their pregnancy, and they are where you know that vomiting and nausea and all of those conditions are very common, then they can't. Then of course, so like I said, it is very, very individual, inshallah.
Does that apply to someone who's just given birth as well?
Yes, of course. So if you have just given birth, then you will be in your nifas anyway, so you cannot fast. And for some women, it lasts 15 to 20 days. Some women, it can last up to a maximum of 40 days. So of course, no. So then they have to not fast. They cannot fast. They're not allowed to fast. And then when they can afterwards, they have to make it up, of course. Those who are breastfeeding, I find it harder than the pregnant women, because breastfeeding makes you very, very thirsty. And this ability of not being able to eat and drink, and if you're going to compromise the nourishment of your newborn baby, then of course it's not advisable for you to do so. You can always breastfeed your baby, be comfortable in yourself, and then afterwards, maybe in the shorter days, keep the fast and make it up then, inshallah. Religion is ease.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you. That's a very substantive response. Maulana Sajjad, does acid reflux, and the question I said, those random mouthfuls of vomit or vomiting, does it break a fast? If you could just elaborate on someone vomiting, full vomit, or having what they call a mini sick.
Well, I have pretty bad acid reflux problems, so I'm probably positioned well to answer that question. But well, there's a huge khilaf on this issue, man. I mean, the Hanafis have such elaborate discussions on if vomiting breaks the fast or not, and if it's a mouthful or less than a mouthful or more than a mouthful, or if you purposely cause yourself to vomit or not. But generally, so it depends what. Firstly, acid reflux doesn't break the fast. That's the first point. So it depends what type of acid reflux you have. So if you have just a little bit of heartburn, obviously heartburn doesn't break the fast. But now there are a couple of ideas and positions about this. So obviously, if you cause yourself to vomit, stick your fingers down your mouth, and you vomit, according to many of the ulama, your fast will break. If you cause yourself to vomit, that is. But if you generally vomit and then there's this idea that if you vomit now, will that break your fast? And the scholars will say, no, it won't break your fast. However, what if you take some of that vomit back in? That's where the problem is. Now, there's this discussion about if you purposely take it back in, which who God knows best why you would ever do that. Does it break it? Or what if some accidentally is swallowed in that sense? As far as I'm aware, the general position in the Hanafi school is if you vomit, it won't break your fast. And as long as you don't swallow your vomit purposely. Now, if you put your fingers down your mouth and you purposely vomit yourself, like you cause yourself to vomit, there is some khilaf on that. There's a difference of opinion on that issue. So yeah, unless people want to pluck a perfect breakdown, we drew up a little while ago. I think I drew up a schematic for it, so I can share that with people, because there's so many different questions that can be asked on just that general topic.
I think that can you hear me, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I think the khulasa of that is it's very hard to break your fast by vomiting. You'd have to put some effort.
Exactly.
So it wouldn't just as Maulana said, the act of vomiting vomiting itself won't break the fast, regardless of the amount, whether it's a small amount or a large amount.
Yeah.
Even if you swallow it back, it doesn't break the fast. And if you're one of those people that has vomited more than a mouthful and then very deliberately did that and deliberately swallowed it back, then I don't think you need a fiqh answer.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. That's why I mentioned that Imam Muhammad, for instance, talks about this idea that if one deliberately swallows his own vomit. Now that's why I don't want to if the questions, if I don't need to answer the question, then I'll just leave it normally. But
here's
generally,
an interesting one though.
Sorry,
let me throw a curveball in. So when we say deliberate, just so that I guess for everyone's, I guess, understanding what we mean in terms of fiqh, what do we mean by deliberate? Because what if you're one of those people that at suhoor you absolutely chug it down, you get lots of water down, because you're panicked that it's a long fast and you need to try and get as much water in. You've also just yesterday night's biryani, you've decided to eat that again for suhoor, as well as some cereal and some yogurt and whatever else you've done. So that mentality that as long as I get a bit of fruit in me, then somehow it justifies everything else. So you have all of that going inside you, and then you go to bed, and the following morning now you feel sick. So would it be considered deliberate from a fiqh point of view? Is that deliberate because you know your body, that stuff is not staying down? Yeah. So what we mean by deliberate, just for everyone's awareness, is deliberate here means that you actually do, as Maulana said, you put your fingers down your throat, or you do something to try and incite that vomit. Not necessarily that you were a bit complacent or negligent and you had a lot to eat, knowing that you'll vomit. There are two different things. So by deliberate, we mean where you have. That's why I said it takes some effort to break your fast, because you'd have to very deliberately do it. So that could mean if you haven't put your fingers down your throat, sometimes you feel sick, and by thinking more about something, you feel you're going to throw up. Well, that's deliberate because you're now causing yourself to become sick.
Jazakumullah khair. I think that question's answered.
Yeah, I mean, see here very interestingly what the ulama say. وَعَادَ بِغَيْرِ صُنْعِهِ. So some of it goes back down, but he didn't engineer that. Yeah, even if his mouth is full of vomit, according to the soundest position. So yeah. Now here's an interesting thing. Some even have an opinion that even if he takes a little bit back himself, I don't know why somebody would do that though. It's very unusual.
Let's park that.
Yeah, why somebody would. Yeah. This is not going very well.
A couple of quick fire questions from the live chat from the YouTube. Maulana Shamus, can someone leave a fast on the day of exam to be able to concentrate better? It's a common question for students who are sitting exams. Some are quite long as well. So not some are 2 hours, some are 3 hours, some are longer.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the answer is no. No, you can't. But again, that's quite a vague question in that concentrate. What does that mean? You could, on the one hand, say fasting doesn't necessarily inhibit your ability to concentrate. So I would certainly, as a general answer, I would say no. Now, if it's in certain very specific cases where somebody who's really fatigued, probably quite weak anyway, just about fasting and really doesn't want to miss the fast, and has been fasting through the month, somebody who's quite weak anyway then has an exam, and it's an exam that's the difference between them getting, I don't know, into medical school or not getting into medical school, failing their university and not failing the university, then that's a different question altogether. I don't think it's as simple as saying no, you can't not break your fast, because the impact of that is probably thousands of pounds that your parents have forked out for you to be able to get into university to take those exams. I think again, if someone's in that situation where it's that dire, where it's make or break, for example, some financial exams, there are people that are in the top 4 accountancy firms and you have a set of exams. If you fail those exams, then that's it. You're out of that firm and you've got to almost start again. So if somebody's in that sort of situation, then I would say again contact us separately. But for the most part, I would say 99% of the time, it's not going to be if you'll pass your exam because you've revised, not because you've had an unfairly exam, not because you've had a lapse of concentration on one question or two questions, for the most part. Yeah.
Well, the Pythagoras interestingly fasted for 40 days before his exam, and I think he did quite well.
He just had one formula though.
Yeah, but remember with fasting and exams, often it's more psychological than it is physical, because think about it, when you're revising for exams, generally, well, it depends on the person, but if you're generally worried about things, you're not going to be scoffing your face eating food. I mean, if you're worried about something, you're probably not going to be eating.
Just on that point, would you recommend dieting in Ramadan for discipline?
Yeah, I mean,
cutting out meat. So some people
isn't that the meaning of Ramadan?
I mean, like cutting out certain foods. So a lot of people don't have meat. Or
firstly, people do Ramadan incorrectly anyway. In terms of, I don't mean like all people do this, but there's a general common. Imam Ghazali in his Ihya talks about this idea that in his period, 1,000 years ago, he was complaining about how people stockpile foods, different types of food for Ramadan, or they eat things that they don't. Now, obviously, he would be shocked if he saw what we were doing in Ramadan. So the idea in Ramadan is, number one, people probably are kind of understanding the concept of food in Ramadan. Food in Ramadan is supposed to be more adi than normal, i.e. that if your food, you have a general type of food, your food should be like of a not lesser quality, but of a lesser luxury, you could say. So your food should be quite simple in Ramadan anyway. The whole idea of Ramadan is the hunger has to have a spiritual dimension to it. So these things would all, of course, be excellent. Why don't we take the opportunity for 30 days to cut something out that inevitably will, cause us, heart problems or diabetes or whatever else it may be. It would be a good opportunity, especially being slightly more ethical. Maybe giving up meat, and it is. Let's be honest, it's an ethical issue now. Eating meat or not, it's no longer a issue of dhabiha and halal and haram. It's maybe we should probably take a few steps here and there. Give up fish after watching Seaspiracy. If you don't give up fish after that, then there's something seriously wrong with you.
We're not sponsored by Netflix. If anyone's. Yeah,
it's true. We probably should be though. Yeah.
It's a disclaimer. Maulana Shamus, and maybe Ustada can chip in as well on this one. For someone who has broken and missed multiple fasts across Ramadan, could you perhaps just clarify what can be done to make up this fast, the kafara? Basically, I know there's a lot of confusion on what you do if you've missed fasts. And depending on why you've missed fast as well. I know there's a lot of discussion on that. So just a brief, as clear as possible of what to do next, basically.
Okay. So this is someone who has historically missed fast.
Yeah, has missed multiple fasts across multiple Ramadans.
Multiple Ramadans. Okay. So I think in that instance, the first thing to do is the Hanafis make a distinction between someone breaking the fast and somebody missing the fast, and that would be your saving grace, I think, in this case, because often when people don't fast, especially in the younger days, it's out of negligence where they probably didn't even make the intention to fast anyway. So I would say if it's those negligent fasts from the past, when you were 17, 18, 19, maybe a bit younger, maybe a bit older, where it didn't really have the spiritual significance, and it was more about something that you were expected to do, and therefore you just did it when you pretended to fast, or fasted only when socially you had to fast, i.e. you kept the fast when you're around people and you didn't when you weren't around people, and you picked and choose. If it's those sorts of situations, then you have to make up those fasts. There isn't a kafara, okay? A kafara is only where you have made the intention to fast, and then you have explicitly and deliberately broken that fast. Is that okay? So and where there's doubt, you don't pay the expiation, you make up the fast. So that's the first point. This isn't necessarily something that all the madhabs have, but the Hanafis specifically make this distinction. And I think, again, this is a saving grace for many people. Where there is an expiation required, i.e. where you know in the past you have fasted, you made the intention, and then you have deliberately broken the fast. Yeah. So not accidentally broken it, not mistakenly broken it, but deliberately broken it. In that case, if somebody has done that in the same Ramadan, so i.e. you decide 4 or 5 times in the same Ramadan when you were 19, you started fasting, got tired in the middle of the day and thought, oh, forget this, I'm eating, and then decided to have some chips from the local chippy. So if that were to happen, and it was 3, 4, 5, 10 times in the same Ramadan, there is only one expiation, one expiation, but atonement. So I'll touch on what that is. Or if someone else wants to touch on that, inshallah, rather than me kind of going through all of this. But so there is one atonement for a whole Ramadan. Okay, so it's not like you do a kafara for every single fast in that Ramadan. If you've missed fast over multiple Ramadans, then this is where there is some ikhtilaf, but the majority of the Hanafis at least say that you have to pay a kafara, you have to do a kafara for each Ramadan. So if that was you missed 1, 2, 20 fasts deliberately, you've broken them in Ramadan 1, and then you've done the same in Ramadan 2, then now you have 60 to make up from the first Ramadan, the atonement, and 60 from the second Ramadan, according to the majority opinion amongst the Hanafis, although there is, again, ikhtilaf on that. If someone has, many Ramadans to worry about, then again, it's something that you probably want to privately email us about, inshallah. We can see what we can advise. So that's it. Now, the question is, do you have to, the atonement, is it 60 fasts consecutively, or is there anything beyond that? Does anyone else want to touch on that? I can elaborate, but I want to open it up to other teachers who maybe want to maybe fill in the gaps if I've missed anything.
Yeah, carry on, inshallah. I'll come in at the end, maybe.
Okay. Ustad Anika, you want to say anything? Yeah. Okay. So when it comes to the kafara, which is the 60 consecutive fast, this is based on the Quran. And the Quran, what it does is it sets out an order, and by order I mean a list, right? So what it tells us is that there is the option to, instead of paying the 60 to making up the 60 fast, that you instead give the equivalent in money to a certain category of people, and they are the poor and impoverished, the masakin. The Hanafis, however, say whenever a list appears in the Quran, you must follow its order, i.e. whatever comes first, you must do that first, unless you can't, in which case you then move on to the second item in the list. And if you can't, then you must go on to the third item in the list, right? So what are the options? The options are freeing a slave, or fasting 60 consecutive fasts, or feeding the masakin, 60 the equivalent of the 60 fasts. You have to pay 2 masakin, either 1 miskin or 60 or 20 or whatever. The number isn't really necessary. It's the amount that's important. That's the equivalent of the 60 fasts that you have to make up. Now, the Hanafis say you must, obviously, slavery is out the, freeing a slave is out the question. So the Hanafis say you must do the fast unless you're physically not able to do those. And it's only if you're not able to do them, then you can give the monetary value. So following that Hanafi position, then what do we mean by physically being able to do them? That's not just, I find it tiring, or it seems like it's too much. These are psychological barriers that are untested. So it requires that you do have to make that effort to fulfill them. If you're young, you're generally quite fit, and you can pick in the time in the year when the fast will be quite short in the winter. Is it possible? Theoretically, the majority of us can do it. I'm not saying we'd be looking forward to doing it, but the majority of us can do them. Having said that, the Shafi'is and other madhabs don't make that explicit requirement of following the order. And I would say if somebody has that, go on, sorry.
You were talking about 60 consecutive fasts as well, just
60, Yeah. So in the Shafi'i madhab, they don't have that. We all agree on the consecutive aspect of it, but they say there isn't necessarily, you don't have to necessarily follow the order. So if somebody has, again, find themselves in this situation, then in the Shafi'i madhab, you can just give the monetary equivalent. You don't have to necessarily test out the 60. Because the trouble is, if you start those 60 and then you fail at 20, you've got to start all over again. so it is supposed to be an expiation. It is about kafara. By definition, there's an act of ibadah and an act of atonement built into it. Yeah, by this, from an usuli point of view, it has both. So by doing the kafara, there is a punishment attached to it, but there is also a ibadah built into it, i.e. there is a way of connecting back to God, the feeling of guilt, and doing everything that you can physically to be able to make up for not missing the fast. Remember, for deliberately disobeying God by breaking the fast. So as I say, you can go to the Shafi'i madhab and give the monetary equivalent. These are for historical fasts. And I would only ever say that to people if you've got these fasts from the younger days that you have to make up. If it's from here on, or if it's something, like now, then I would say always going forward, we're on the panel, we're all, Hanafi. So therefore we should assume the Hanafi position, which means if you were to find yourself in a situation, it would be the 60 fast unless you're physically not able to do so.
Jazakumullah khair. I hope that's answered that question in quite some detail. Ustada Anika.
Maulana, I think he's trying to say something. You're on mute.
Could I just add a mercy to that position? Just one extra mercy.
I love Rahma is a good thing.
Yeah. So with just an additional point, with if you have kafaras over multiple Ramadans, I would go with the idea that one kafara is sufficient. Because that is kind of that's the Zahir riwayah. I know the Hanafis do differ a little about it, but a lot of the ulama, that is the Zahir riwayah, and others also accept that position. And I think it will be easier for people to do as well. That if they, for instance, have let's say last Ramadan, let's say the Ramadan before that, 2 Ramadans ago, you broke the fast, and let's say twice or 3 times, and then last Ramadan you did it again, that one kafara yakfikum is sufficient. I think that let's not bilkul khatam na kar de yaar, like give them a little bit of yeah. So yeah, because even Shurum Bulali says, because like ala qadr al imkan, like what they can do.
Yeah.
Imagine somebody turns up and he says, yeah, I've done every Ramadan. So yeah.
I'm starting to fast now. I've decided to buck my ideas up. I've got 15 Ramadans I miss. What do I do? No problem.
Book your janazah
times 5. He goes, no, chalo, I'll come back next year.
Chalo, so yeah, I just that addition, nothing.
Yeah.
Ustada Anika, how long before Fajr, and this may open a long discussion, maybe. How long before Fajr does Suhoor end?
Okay, so Bismillah again. Very interesting question. Books have been written on this by one of my, very esteemed teacher as well. So you will find that in some of the calendars of your masajid, Suhoor ends, and then like there's half an hour, and sometimes there's 45 minutes, and then the Fajr doesn't start. And what are you supposed to do in that time? So a lot of problem, lot of confusion, leaving scholarly debates aside. Because that's not helpful. Just to explain it very, very quickly. The reason there are 2 Suhoor ends and Fajr starts is based on the position, whether the 14.5 degree position has been taken or a 12.5 degree position has been taken. The earlier time where Suhoor ends is a 14.5 degree position. And please interrupt me if I am going too technical. The Fajr starts is the 12.5 degree position, which means that there's a difference in opinion because of this khilaf, these 2 different. So it is advisable, and we were actually discussing this very morning actually, because it is time for the Ramadan calendars to be printed, and all the masajid and their timetables are being debated. The advice is that if you have 2 positions, and this was the advice given to me by my teacher, is that it is, if you can do it, and if it is the shorter the longer nights and the shorter days, then there's not that much of a difference. But the difference becomes extreme in the summer months. Let's focus on these April fasts then. So I was just looking at the calendar today, and there is a 20 to 38 minute difference as the fasts go longer. The advice that I have given and was given myself is that if you're going to stick to one position, which is you're going to take the 12.5 degree position, stick to that position, both for your fajr and your suhoor, or you're going to stick to the other position. But if you have it in you, then yes, stick to the suhoor ends, which is better for you, and fajr starts when you have that second timing. If, however, your timetable from your masjid just shows the one time, just stick to that. It's as simple as that. Now, I've oversimplified a very technical issue here. And I'm sure Ustaz Shams, who has spent many an hours on citing dawn, and can explain this in a lot more technical detail, but I think that would take away from trying to simplify things, trying to answer questions very simply for people. If you've got a calendar which says suhoor ends, fajr starts, and it is very difficult for you to follow, then stick to one timetable. And that is the advice given to me by the author of the book, shall we say. And if you can have the difference, if it's just 20 minutes, which it is in May now, it is only 20 minutes, then start your fajr when it says on the timetable.
Can I just add a point there? Just a point of responsibility. Remember, for the most, Joe public out there, they can't they don't have any kind of nazir. They don't have any kind of, they don't have any real knowledge of these technical matters anyway. Yeah. Especially when it comes to prayer times and when it comes to, when the fast closes, and it's inevitably, essentially it's prayer times.
Yeah.
Now, lacking all that technical knowledge, and it requires a lot of knowledge, because even prayer times alone are mentioned in the fiqh books, but we're talking about unique situations in northern latitudes. So it's not really, the onus is not on the public to go and do the tahqiq, because they don't have the tools to do it. Like we've read, some Hudi talks about the idea that the awam are not to blame for these things. So therefore, it's not your fault on who you follow, essentially, because you are going to follow your local masjid, the closest place to you that you trust with calendars. Now, the masjids are responsible really in putting together calendars that are really anchored in good scholarship. It's the job of the masjids. Unfortunately, the public have been dragged into this debate through TV channels and YouTube channels and the ulama coming public. And most of the public do not understand basic masail when it comes to prayer, leave alone difficult issues related to atmospheric conditions and when fajr starts and what degrees it starts on. Degrees for them, anyway. So what is the kind of, what should the public do? Very simply put, most masjids have calendars that are valid or within a valid range, I would say. Now, I haven't really found any masjids that are wildly off, unless they've got kind of mistakes in their timetables. However, the point was important about sticking to one, because just go with what you regularly kind of use. And as most masjids do have scholars who advise them anyway, and trust that. Unless there's something really off, just stick to it as it is. If you feel that you have a bit of knowledge and you've studied a little and you feel more comfortable with a particular position, ahlan wa sahlan, take that position then and follow that group of scholars. But please, people need to stop going out there and troubling the public or confusing them, really. I get phone calls all the time. Oh, I've got a timetable here, and Isha is the fast closes at 1:15, 1:15 or 1:30, and what should I do? And I'll ask them, is that the local masjid you go to? Say, no. My friend gave me this one. He said that you have to repeat all your fasts from last year and your prayers. So it doesn't work like that. I mean, Dr. Asim wrote a wonderful book on it, Shedding Light on the Dawn. That's a detailed book. Go and read that book if you want. However, if you're in the 18 degree camp and you're really, I remember somebody said once 18 degrees Zindabad. So if you're an 18 degrees Zindabad person, ahlan wa sahlan, whatever rocks your boat, dude. If that's a position that you think is legally valid for you, and you're really, mashallah, muhakkik azim, you're this great muhakkik who has come to that conclusion, then take it, fine. But don't think the other ulama haven't looked at the topic. and they don't have the evidences for their position. So at least be a little respectful of that. And please don't go around trying to invalidate everybody's fasts. So that's just the addition I want in terms of responsibility, where the responsibility lies.
Jazakumullah khair. Ustada Anika, as you are also a qualified dentist, we have a question for you.
Is there an unqualified dentist?
Do you have any appointments? I think is the question.
I think definitely. An urgent appointment is needed for dental problem. Ramadan is now entering. To keep the fast or not, or to stick to the appointment if it's urgent. I guess this is more general as well, but
yeah. Bismillah again. Look, I will elaborate that, and this is just general dental advice. This is free dental advice. I'm not charging you. So, dentistry per se does not break your fast. In the Hanafi madhab, however, there is a difference between a khata, accident, and khata. So, khata and nisyan, I mean, accidental, or shall I say forgetfully, So that's two different things. If, however, most of my patients, some of them have woken up, they have kept the fast, they will make the dental appointment, they will come into me and say, this is now urgent dental treatment, abscesses, toothache, killing them, Firstly, they have the permission to open the fast. I will not use the word break the fast, and make up a single fast for that broken fast later. Yes, they have that choice, and there is no kafara or anything for it. You just have to make up one fast if they break the fast because of the pain, because if they have to take painkillers or something. However, they don't need to take the painkillers. They just end up at the dentist. They have been screaming, crying, and I have had that many times. The ladies especially, they will not break the fast. They will be in pain, agony, crying. I have giving them local anesthetic will not break their fast. Opening their tooth, doing an urgent root canal treatment is what's normally needed. Even a filling or something, none of that will break the fast. Having said that, as long as they do not swallow the water that I have put in their mouth. Okay, now if I can give them enough breaks and they can keep spitting and we have adequate suction and everything, I have managed to keep a lot of my patients fast. Very rarely they'll say, oh my God, I swallowed that. Now if they say that, then I'll say, no worries, don't eat for the rest of the day. You're not supposed to eat and drink for the rest of the day out of the respect of the month of fasting. But what they do is then they make up that one fast later on. So there you go. Sorry, just giving you a Shafi'i position now. The Shafi'i position is that if by accident you swallow the fast, it will not break it. But as we are all Hanafis, I will stick to the Hanafi advice. Okay.
It's a USP for Dr. Anika's surgery. If you want to have your dentist treatment and keep your fast, you know where to go. Maulana Sajjad, if for someone for whom ghusl, the major ablution is wajib, do they need to perform ghusl before the suhoor ends, or can they start the fast in a state of major impurity?
As long as, so I mean, maybe it's a question within a question, but if they enter a state of janaba, I assume this is like they're in a state of janaba before the sahar ends. I assume, is that the question? So they can be. So the fast will begin. This is an important point, that the fast will automatically begin for them once the time enters. So once sahar is finished and fajr is entered, they're essentially fasting. So an easy example of that is, imagine somebody goes to sleep at night and has a nocturnal dream and then wakes up, misses the sahar, wakes up fajr time, and obviously they're in a state of janaba now. So they're also in a state of fasting as well. So therefore they'll just make the ghusl. It won't invalidate the fast. That's what they're asking, I assume.
Yeah. So how would you then perform ghusl if the fast has now, you've started fasting? Yeah,
you don't have to drink water for ghusl, so you're okay with that. So I mean, what they shouldn't do is they shouldn't gargle or try to take a lot of water into their nose such that they end up swallowing it. So they shouldn't exaggerate in those things. But I don't. Is there like a question within a question of how they should perform the ghusl?
Is there any dislike in starting the fast whilst in a state of major?
No, the fast is wajib on them. The point I'm making is they're fasting whether they like it or not in this situation. Remember, there's this whole discussion in the fiqh books about, and me and with one of the other teachers, I had this discussion once, quite a detailed discussion on this, about with the Hanafi school, the general idea is that once a month of Ramadan enters, that the niyyah is amma, and the idea there is that you generally, one assumes that they're fasting every day. Where in the Shafi'i school, for instance, they have the concept of tabyit, and tabyit is this idea that you make an intention in the nighttime. The Hanafis don't have that idea. They don't make it wajib. So the idea is that unless you counter intend, i.e. that you've intended now that you're not going to fast. But if you have the intention, I'm going to be fasting every single day, and you've not missed your sahar, and this is a really important one about sahar, by the way, that a lot of people make a mistake, and somebody's going to ask you anyway. So what happens is, and probably the same as ghusl. So imagine somebody went to sleep. They know tomorrow they have the general intention that they're fasting, like everybody normally does, 2nd or 3rd of Ramadan, and they miss sahar completely. So they've not woken up before Fajr has entered. They're in a state of janaba. They're fasting. They just make the ghusl. Okay. But what if now they went and ate food because they thought that they were not in a state of fasting? Or a better example is the hadith in Bukhari, one who does not wake up for sahar, make the sahar, he has not fasted. So they read that hadith. Now, so based on that hadith, they go and eat, you see. Now, Shurun Bulali and others, they have, and same as hijama as well. He who has had hijama has not fasted. None of these hadith are in reference to breaking the fast. They reference to the idea that you lose kind of the additional reward of fasting. So the general principle is that when you went to sleep, you assume that you were fasting the next day. If you miss your sahar, you're in a state of fasting. That's the point.
Excellent. Jazakumullah khair.
Just can I just add to that also, that this is actually, you can prove this from the Quran. The Quran speaks about this specifically, where the Sahaba were unsure about whether it was permissible for them to have to resume marital relations during the night while they were fasting, during Ramadan, sorry. So the Quran explicitly tells us that it's permissible. And then the words that are used is أُحِلَّ لَكُمْ لَيْلَةُ الصِّيَامِ الرَّفَثُ إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. So the Quran explicitly tells us that it's permissible for you to continue relations even during the night in Ramadan. But it then tells us till the point that the fast starts. So the Hanafi usulis, the Hanafi scholars then establish from that it's permissible for one to because that verse does not specify that you have to then do your ghusl, that you have to be prepared for entering the fast. So it says you may do whatever you like in terms of within the bounds of what's permissible up to the point that the actual fast starts. And therefore the usulis establish from that ghusl is not necessary in order for the validity of the fast. Yeah, this is a quite a big discussion within the books of usul about the validity of the fast, regardless of intention and reason. So one could have entered major ritual impurity through some permissible halal means, but it's also possible it was through impermissible or makruh means. The Hanafis don't make a distinction they don't make a distinction based on the reason why you've entered into major ritual impurity. The Shafi'is and the Hanafis do differ on this quite a bit in terms of how you enter a particular state. The Hanafis say regardless of how you enter that state, it makes no difference. If one was to suddenly find themselves now fasting and then major ritual impurity and they haven't done their ghusl, as Maulana has already articulated, that fast is still valid. It has no effect whatsoever on the validity of the fast.
Jazakumullah khair. Maulana Shams, back to you again. Can you donate blood while fasting?
Can you donate blood while you're fasting? General answer, yes. There's no harm in. You can take stuff out the body. You just can't put it in. So So blood coming out of the body, no problem. The only exceptions, I guess, it would be where somebody is very weak and they're risking their fast. So someone's very frail, elderly, and they suddenly decide that have high himma, that I'm barely breathing, but I'm going to now donate blood. Then I would probably just tell them not to. But other than that, yeah, no.
What do you think about the hijama idea? Then would you compare it, make it similar to the hijama idea?
Yeah, exactly. Elaborate for everyone the hijama.
Yeah, so I mean, the issue with the hijama is for health, whereas donating blood is for somebody else's health, possibly. So there's that nuance there that, it's the altruistic kind of addition to that. But the hadith of hijama is the Prophet ﷺ said that the one who gives hijama, the hajjam, and the one who is given the hijama, neither of them have fasted. And Shurun Bulali talks about this idea, and very interesting point that he mentions, which is really shows you that the religion is about mercy, because he says that this hadith does not mean that your fast is broken. It just means you shouldn't have done it. And exactly like Sheikh Shamas mentioned, it's because the idea is that you'll become very weak if blood is taken out of the body. And there's more chance of you now feeling weak and needing to break your fast. And as for the one who's cupping you, giving hijama, well, he should have closed his shop in Ramadan. But anyway, except maybe once after iftar, only after iftar cupping. Now, Shurun Bulali writes that what if somebody read that hadith and he's not a scholar, and then he thinks, okay, well, I'm fasted, I didn't know this hadith was there. He gets it in his WhatsApp. Shurun Bulali wasn't around in WhatsApp but time. So he writes that, look, purely technically speaking, kafara is wajib on that person, because he's purposely broken his fast because of his jahl. However, he writes he should go to a mufti or a scholar, and maybe the scholar will give him save him essentially.
Yeah.
May give him an alternative position because he didn't know. The whole idea is the udhr bil jahl, that can you make an excuse for ignorance? And Shurun Bulali puts that there. He writes, well, unless you go to a scholar and he says otherwise, technically speaking, not only is it broken and kafara is also wajib, but he puts a saving grace at the end and says, yeah, look for somebody that may have some mercy on you, and only the first time.
It's interesting because Imam Tatawi, what he says is he says something along the lines of, if you made that decision yourself, i.e. you've decided that hijama breaks my fast, and then you go and have a meal afterwards thinking I've broken it anyway, might as well go and enjoy it. He says, if you believed it broke your fast because a mufti told you, then there's no kafara because you did your bit. It's a mufti's fault. But if you did it up your own back, then there is a kafara.
I didn't tell anybody anything. Yeah.
But generally speaking, we'd say the majority would say that there is no kafara in that instance, because again, as long as it's done with sincerity. But so in the past, if someone's had bloods taken and then believed their fast is broken, and then they carried on their day as if their fast is broken, they just have to make up that fast.
Right, I'd like to take all of your take on this question. Does the COVID vaccine break the fast? Having your vaccine done during the month of Ramadan,
I've already had it, so.
Do you postpone your jab, or do you?
Well, my second jab, I don't know when my Shamas, have you had your second jab?
Yeah, I've had my second jab. Yeah.
I haven't had my second. You see, I don't know when that is.
So if I could take all of your points on that, please.
Well, just I'm not an expert in COVID vaccinations. Before we move on to another topic, but generally speaking, vaccinations do not break the fast. So, although there's a khilaf in the Hanafi school, don't get me wrong, there has been a khilaf, and the ulama have weirdly a range of opinions on it, because for me it's binary, it's black or white. It either breaks the fast or it doesn't, and you need very good reasons for it breaking your fast. So if you inject something into the body, it's because some of them differentiate. They say, does it give you energy? Does it not? And others, they just say, look, if it's an injection into your arm, it will not break the fast. No.
Sorry, Izhar, can I sort of go? Maulana's just made the basic statement, and I would 100% agree with that. the COVID vaccination is an intramuscular injection. It is not in any way nourishing to your body. It is not entering neither your bloodstream directly, because it permeates through the fat and eventually gets absorbed. Neither is it entering your jowf, your alimentary tract. So as it is not a nourishing injection, in fact, it is a vital injection. It's saving your life and life of many others around you. If you've got your COVID vaccination appointment, just go. Simple. There's no left, no right. You have to go attend that appointment and keep your fast on that day, inshallah. Having said that, there are many people who may have adverse side effects post-vaccination. It never happens on the day of the vaccination. So firstly, it's not breaking your fast, but the second day and the third day, some very rarely, depending on which vaccination you're having as well, may have severe headache, nausea, or nausea. Some have had fever and stuff. Then in that case, you are ill and you can leave the fast for that day, and then of course make it up later. But that's it really.
Mona Syllabus, anything to add?
Same injections, intramuscular, intravenous, don't break the fast, and it has to be a natural orifice in order for it to be considered ingestion, and therefore.
Right. So moving on to the next question, maybe a little bit more interesting. Do inhalers break the fast? And I'd like to take all your views on it as well.
I will, inshallah, give that complete diverse responsibility to Maulana Sajjad.
I am the resident asthmatic here. So I believe for some odd reason, being an asthmatic, I have more right to answer that question. This is a very interesting question. And it's been discussed for many years. Look, they are different. So you will find some positions, divergent positions on the issue. The classical position pre-asthma inhalers is that if you inhale gas, different types of gas, or smoke, really, they are dukhan, the idea, purposely, a body of smoke will break the fast. Now, of course, asthma inhalers is more than just that. And as far as, if we took the wide range of fatwa on the topic, generally speaking, I've seen more fatwa stating that the asthma inhaler does break the fast, especially with the Hanafis, because of the concept of idkhal versus dukhul. The idea that you yourself purposefully are taking the asthma inhaler and you're inhaling the idea of the concept of idkhal, you're doing it with intention. And so they said it breaks the fast, and they didn't add much to it. They didn't give much care to the idea of it's only for breathing or not. They didn't differentiate. But then there were other opinions. For instance, the famous Saudi cleric or mufti or Salih ibn Uthaymeen, who gave a fatwa that it doesn't break the fast because it facilitates breathing. However, when I read it wasn't more than that. Like, that's all he said. He said, well, it's not food. So khalas, like, it wasn't very detailed. Then, of course, I've heard from some other scholars, Azharis as well, saying similar things. Then I think there was a mufti or scholar in Bradford as well that released an article saying, making qiyas or analogy with the himmisa, like the chickpea that remains in your mouth. And personally, I didn't find that particular argument compelling. So safe position would be to take, as far as the general body of scholars out there, scholarship out there, would be that the asthma inhaler does break. We're talking about, it depends on the inhaler. I'll mention at the end of this. If it's the blue one, just a reliever. If it's kind of the brown one, that's a different story. But generally, if you take an inhaler whilst fasting, the fast will break. However, just some advice. Take your steroid inhaler in the morning, or take it multiple times if you have to. Depends on how bad your asthma is. Actually, Shamus can comment on this as well, because his wife has asthma as well. But take it before. And for me anyway, it does the job. Now, also, you can take medication. You can get tablets that are steroids in tablet form that also will help you avoid using a reliever, avoid using the blue inhaler during the day. So there are ways around it, of course. Now, for somebody who has chronic or brittle asthma, it's a serious form of asthma, that cannot live without the inhaler, I had this discussion also with Sheikh Ridwan about this. I think you need to seek, I would just say here, seek a proper personal legal opinion for that, because there possibly is some leeway there for that particular person and their fast, because it's, some of the ulama have talked about this idea that if they have brittle asthma and they can't live without it, is there some rukhsa for them where they can still fast and not, because that's the only problem they have. It's not the fact that they can't live without food, it's just the fact that they can't breathe. And there may be some leeway for them, but again, they'll have to contact us, or we'll put them in touch with people who are kind of abkariyun in that topic and have a detailed fatwa on that topic. But generally, the general position I would say is that it does nullify the fast.
Jazakumullah khair. Ustada Anika, just a couple of questions. I'll put it into one. Washing your mouth whilst in wudu, or brushing your teeth, or having a bath, those kind of daily sort of routine things that we do. Does Ramadan have any effect on these things? Oh, Ustad, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Bismillah. Yeah, they're very, very sort of, general sort of things that we have to do. We have to do wudu to pray. If you have woken up in a state of janaba, you have to do ghusl. And like Maulana said earlier, do not gargle so that the water enters your alimentary tract, which is, nothing can enter a natural orifice, but that does not include your mouth. That includes your alimentary tract begins at the throat, at the upper, basically the pharynx and the larynx for technical reasons. Nothing can enter that. You can rinse your mouth out, of course, not a deep gargle. So not really, even if some wetness remains, some people have vasvasa, and my teacher, which is Ustaz Shams, has very, very technically advised us that those people who have this vasvasa, that I have this wetness and I'm going to swallow it, and then they don't know, they keep spitting after doing their wudu. So a very practical way around that is that you should limit yourself. If you feel that you're one of those people who have this wetness vasvasa, you should limit yourself to 3 spits. You've done your wudu, you've rinsed your mouth out 3 times, not deeply. You spit once, twice, and maximum of 3 times, and that's it. There is no moisture left in your mouth. Whatever is in your mouth is your natural saliva. Some people salivate a lot, so that does not mean that's sort of extra wetness. Second question is, I'm sort of reading all these sort of questions here. That includes mouthwash and toothpaste. So look, the Hanafi position is, Hanafis are very strict in that. Unless it is absolutely, now water you need for wudu, yeah? Shafis are slightly easier, same as when I said about dentistry. For them, accidental swallowing does not break the fast, it does for us. So why do you want to compromise your fast? Use toothpaste or a mouthwash, when if by accident, because mouthwash is normally, because it has some sort of, gaseous element to it, there's effervescent and stuff, there is a risk of swallowing or some taste left in your mouth, which you cannot get rid of no matter how many times you spit. Same as with the toothpaste. Why would you compromise your fast by doing that? Using the toothpaste in and of itself or a mouthwash is not breaking the fast. It is the risk that you are putting your fast in of breaking it if you swallow it by accident. Accidental swallowing breaks the fast according to the Hanafi fiqh. So I would say avoid it, simply. I'm sure Ustaz Shams or Maulana can add to that.
Jazakumullah khair. I think that was wonderfully answered. Maulana Syllabus, is it bad for someone who doesn't pray 5 times a day regularly to decide or to make niyyah to only commit to reading the fard raka'at during Ramadan, even though it is sinful to miss sunnahs deliberately, but the person commits to just the fard acts so that they can at least build habit?
I think there's 2 ways of answering that question, but just for brevity, it's, if you look at it purely from, again, a technical perspective, from the principally speaking, just because you can't do something in its most optimal way doesn't mean you should miss it out altogether. That's actually a maxim, a legal maxim, that if you can't do something in its optimal sense, it does not mean you should then miss it out altogether, i.e. do what you can. Yeah, so it's doing something that you can't do kamilan, to do it not even with some nuqsan in it is better than to not do it at all. So where you have somebody who doesn't pray, and then suddenly decides, okay, I want to now pray. Ideally, they should be aiming high. Always have, this is more about mentality than anything else, I would say. And this is not a discussion or necessarily a session on, I guess, our mindsets and our psychology, but it's worth considering that if you're going into any endeavor in life where you're kind of 50-50, then don't be surprised if you don't manage to fulfill whatever ambition you have. You got to go in and aim really high. If you're going to start a business, you got to really put your all into it. In the same way, if you're coming into Ramadan and you think this is where I'm going to start, you can start with the mindset that I'll build it up slowly, or you can start with the mindset of I'm going to come up with a realistic target. What's the person I want to be at the end of this 30 days? And set that, make it realistic, discuss it with somebody if you want to. There's no harm in you actually speaking to people who know you. You don't want to over-egg it, but at the same time, don't undersell yourself either, and then work towards that. Now, specifically to answer the question, I would say, is it anything wrong in that? Well, this is kind of a loaded and a relative term, because it's wrong not to pray. It's wrong not to fast. And then relative to that, to fast a bit is better, and therefore it's right to start fasting, it's right to start praying. But relative to what you should be doing as a Muslim, sane, responsible adult, and the expectation, then there is something there, because we should be aiming to pray more regularly. We should be aiming to fast in the best way possible. So if you can't do it completely, do the best that you can. If you think I can't, do all my sunnahs and whatnot, don't force yourself to do it just because someone's telling you to do it. Do a bit, but the main thing is stick to the sunnah, and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to whatever you decide on. As I say, my view is always aim high, but be realistic. But make sure as part of that you're consistent with it. Keep doing it. Keep at it. It's better that you do small amounts of the Prophet. There's a kind of an adage that the best things are those that are done in small, and it's actually a narration to that. It's done in small amounts, but it's done frequently and regularly. So it's better do something regular. So I would say start somewhere and keep doing it, inshallah, and keep up with it. But aspire at least to improve.
Jazakumullah khair. Maulana Sajjad, if someone suffers from eating disorders, anorexia, bulimia, or other kind of eating disorders, and fasting is a trigger for them, what should that person do?
I mean, it's a very difficult question. I mean, they probably need to talk to a mental health expert, maybe a psychiatrist, because people's simple answer.
It's like physically you can probably fast, but obviously the mental.
Yeah, because mental health is, I've know a few people that suffer from serious eating disorders, and it's sometimes an eating disorder can, you'll end up being sectioned because of it. It's that bad, it can kill you. So they'll probably need to seek professional medical help, advice. And if their psychiatrist or their doctor says, look, fasting will help it, but if fasting makes it worse and it makes their condition worse, especially people who suffer from bulimia, for instance, or anorexia, or any iterations of those issues, then those people have serious health problems. And if fasting is going to make them really unwell, and the principle is clear that if fasting makes you unwell, not only unwell, the principle is if fasting makes you unwell or it prolongs your recovery, what they call butu in Arabic, then one shouldn't fast. It's like an illness, you see. When you're recovering from illness, you shouldn't fast if by fasting you're going to increase the time of recovery, for recovery. So the same argument would apply, but they need to seek medical professional help for that, or advice.
Ustada Anika, when a woman whose haid finishes at Fajr time or before midday intends to fast, why is her fast not valid?
So technically there are two questions. Did the haid finish before Fajr, or did the haid finish at Fajr or after Fajr? That is the differentiation. So if a woman who's menstruating and she is sure that after Isha she has not had any bleeding and her haid has actually finished before the Fajr time comes in, then she can, even if let's say she missed Fajr for something, yeah, but she is sure that she has not had any bleeding till then she can do her ghusl even after Fajr, read the Fajr, or if she has missed it afterwards, and carry on with that fast. However, if there is even a spot of bleeding, even a spot, I say, after Fajr has come in, she cannot keep the fast, even if that stops straight away and she's okay by Zohar. She cannot keep the fast for that, because the condition of entering the state of fast is to be free of haid. Do you see? So this is a technical point that girls often do not, and ladies, my sisters, do not often understand. They cannot legally enter a fast unless they are out of haid. Okay, so if they're not out of haid, fast has started at Fajr, they cannot then. However, unfortunately, they have to abstain from eating and drinking because of the respect of the day and the respect of the month, and they have to then make up that fast like they would any of their haid fasts. Another question that I was looking at, which I think Ustaz Tahir, by the way, there are answers being given by teachers on the YouTube chat as well, so do keep them coming. The question that I would like to answer, that I would like to repeat, that Ustaz Tahir has already answered, you do not have to make up all your missed fast from the previous Ramadan that you have missed because of haid before the next Ramadan comes in. You have time to do it. It is advisable to do so because it is fard on you, and any fard has to be done as soon as possible. But the undue duress can happen when you have not made them up. And then suddenly you've been told, oh, you have to make up before the next Ramadan, and then you've got, like, say 10 years worth of fasts to make up. No. So do it, complete it as soon as you can possibly do, because they are obligated on you, but not before the next Ramadan comes in. Okay.
Can I just add, because I can imagine this is probably a question that some people are thinking of, and I think it's come up before, is what happens if a sister has wakes up in the morning having missed her suhoor, let's say Fajr, so she's not sure when the discharge ended, so she finds discharge but she doesn't know when it is, and what would you respond to that?
Well, to be honest, for that it is advisable to be prudent. All sisters know their cycle. They know their cycle. They know that they are either, if it is the last day of their cycle, and if they know that this can be my last day, or this is almost my last day, then please do wake up for Fajr. Why you keeping it vague? And then when you wake up for Fajr, if you find spotting, then you cannot keep that fast because you're not sure. You're not sure. However, wake up for Fajr, and if you are clean, then do intend the fast. And then after that, if you get the spotting, then of course you have to make up the fast later on. So the answer is very simple. Don't be lazy. Wake up, check it, especially when you know your cycle is coming to an end, because I find that I get that question a lot. And I just find that it's a very simple thing. You know your cycle. You know when you're going to not have that.
Inshallah, people can get in touch. Your sisters can get in touch with you, right? So there's a way of getting to, if they've got any questions, a specific question and these sorts of things. So
any questions on haid or nifas, menstruation, postnatal bleeding, menopause, perimenopause, anything, feel free to either send directly to the email. We have a special email, specific email. Maybe somebody can write it on the YouTube chat. It's anika@sacredtext.co.uk. Simple. anika@sacredtext.co.uk, and just send in. I get a lot of emails anyway, so yeah, feel free.
Jazakumullah, we can share that on the live chat for anyone who wants to ask those questions. Jazakumullah khair. I'd just like to say for your time, I think a lot of questions have been answered as well, so it'll be really beneficial. We have a few more minutes, so a few more quick fire questions for quick fire answers, inshallah. Taraweeh and COVID-19.
Well, we are placing. What's the question though?
20 raka'ah, no raka'ah, 8 raka'ah, go to mosque, not go to mosque, just generally.
Firstly, the masjids have restricted numbers anyway. Even in our own place in Solihull, Deen Central, we've restricted numbers. So first and foremost, even with in terms of when masjids were restricting numbers for Jumu'ah, the ulama generally here in this country said that the wujubas were lifted anyway, because not everybody can pray. There's no idhn al-am that they would pray dhuhr after ihtiyatan. So for Taraweeh, of course, the rule applies. Again, if only 80 people can be hosted for a Taraweeh, If you can't go, then pray at home. If you're scared, a lot of people are scared, you see. They don't want to go to the masjid in case they get COVID. Then just pray at home. Bring your family together. And most people have memorized Juz Amma and do the Tarawih at home.
Someone who's missed many fasts over many years, we're talking maybe 5-10 years, due to chronic illness, but they become healthy.
There's no, they don't have to pay for those fasts.
What is?
You just have to make them up.
Yeah, but just bear in mind with that, just adding to that. So, but if they have paid for them, you still have to make them up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that.
A question to all, and it's a bit of and maybe it's a nice way to end. Why do we fast? I've always been told it's to grow sympathy and empathy for people less fortunate, for poor. Is that why we fast? Or if I guess if each one of you could give your take on why we fast, and I think that would be a nice.
I'll go first, Tony. I mean, fasting is multifaceted. There's not one particular reason, but in the Quran, if you take the Quranic reason, Allah says لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you can experience God consciousness. So the idea that you can have essentially an outer body spiritual experience, that your spiritual experience is, you're not governed by your animal dimension anymore, that now you've unlocked the angelic kind of form within yourself and you experience your true self. So that's what God mentions in the Quran. That's what Allah places in the Quran, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so you receive taqwa, but taqwa, the idea of being aware of God. So I would say that it's to heighten one's spiritual senses. That's one of the primary reasons. And that, of course, will feed into things like, charity and empathizing with being more empathic and things like that. But definitely, I would say, from my perspective, I would say to unlock or to open up that spiritual eye. I don't want to step on anybody's toes there, any other tradition, but and to unlock that angelic kind of dimension within every human being. That's what I would say.
Sorry, Izhar, can I sort of go next? And we will leave the stage open then for Ustaz Shams to end, inshallah. My take on this is going to be very short and sweet. Please join me every Tuesday, because that is exactly what I'm going to be talking about for 45 minutes to an hour every Tuesday from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. This will include answering all your questions. And for sisters, if you want live answers to your Hayd and your Nifas questions, then I will be there every Tuesday as part of our Sacred Text series. And I'll be discussing the reasons why we fast in that great detail, mostly through Imam Ghazali's Kitab Asrar al-Sawm, but adding to it from books from various scholars, and inshallah my own take on it as well. So yeah, there you are.
Excellent. So please tune in. We do have, just on a side note, we have a packed program for Ramadan. Sacred Text is busy as always during the month of Ramadan. So please, do tune in, try and support in the best way you can, inshallah. And we're always open to suggestions as well, inshallah. So if you feel like you want a specific topic or you want something, you want Ustad Anika, for example, to do something specific, whatever it is, let us know, inshallah. We're here trying our best to try and provide these much needed services, inshallah. So just to conclude, Maulana Shams,
I think is there another question?
Just your take on why we fast, I guess.
I think they've said all there is to say. I mean, I'm a man of the law, so the Quran says kutiba alaykum siyam. Human beings require, we need authority. We're throughout life, that's all we ever have, and authority doesn't mean anything unless you have an opportunity to live that authority, to receive that authority. So when Allah tells us to fast, the reason why we fast ultimately is because God tells us, He commands us to, and as being subservient servants to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's our duty to respond to the call when we receive it. But there's many spiritual dimensions, as Maulana has touched on, alluded to, that there's a dimension to this about gaining God consciousness, and in terms of developing that idea, that's where you got Ustaz Anika's class, where I'm sure she will elaborate on that in great detail over the coming few weeks, inshallah.
Jazakumullah khair. I hope each and every one you found this hour and a half beneficial. I certainly did. Jazakumullah khair to the panel for joining us. May Allah bless you all. On behalf of Sacred Texts, we wish you an early Ramadan Mubarak. Please keep us all in your du'as and keep in touch on our social media platforms. Like I said before, we are busy. I know we have lessons, and students are continuing to study and to learn the sacred sciences during the month of Ramadan and during the year. But please join us. We have a fully packed schedule for you guys on Ramadan, and we wish to go through this month actually, and as a community. I know we've lost a lot of that during the period, but we're getting back to some form of normality, inshallah. So let's have this Ramadan together, each and every one of us. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.